Hello friends, I am Dr. Richa Bhatia from the Department of Commerce, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. And today, I'm here to talk about a very interesting topic of income tax, that is income from salaries. So till now, you might have understood that all kinds of taxable income of an SSE are divided in 5 heads. The first one is income from salary, the second one is income from house property, the third one is income from business and profession, the fourth one is income from capital gains, and the last one is income from other sources. Today, we are going to discuss about the first head of income, that is income from salary, and we are going to start with very basic terms and then move on to the concepts. So now, what do you understand by the word salary? According to Section 14 of the Income Tax Act 1961, any remuneration paid by the employer to his employee in consideration of his services is termed as salary. Now we need to understand that what all comes under salary. That is defined under Section 15 of the Income Tax Act 1961. So please concentrate on these 3 points. Number 1, salary due from an employer or former employer to the SSE in the previous year, whether paid or not. That means if the salary is due, whether it is paid or not in the previous year, it will come under the head of income from salary. The second point, the salary paid or allowed to him in the previous year by or on behalf of the employee or former employee through not due or before it becomes due to him. That means any salary which is paid in the previous year, that is in advance, will also form a part of income from salary. The third point, any arrear of salary paid or allowed to him in the previous year by the employer or on behalf of the employer or former employer if not charged to income tax for any previous year. That means the salary which is in arrears and it has been paid and was not charged in the previous year to tax will also form a part of salary. That means there are 3 points that you need to understand. The first one, salary due will form a part of income from salary, whether paid or not paid. Any advance salary and the arrears of salary which are received in the previous year and were not charged to the income tax in the earlier previous years will also form a part of salary. Now we need to understand that what comes in salary. So according to Section 17(1) of the Income Tax Act 1961, there are 4 major things that will form the gross salary. The first one is the basic salary, the second one is the allowances, the third one is the perquisites, and the last one is the profit in lieu of salary. These 4 items together will form the gross salary, and then from the gross salary we need to give certain deductions. Those deductions are under Section 16. Those deductions are the entertainment allowance, the standard deduction, and the professional tax. After giving these 3 deductions, we get our final taxable income from salary. So today, we are going to discuss the first major part of the head salary, which is allowances. Now, what are allowances? Any payments in cash which are made by the employer to the employee monthly in addition to his salary, those are termed as allowances. In very simple terms, it is a fixed payment, but it is a regular payment which is made in addition to the salary for rendering some specific services in addition to the basic services. So these are allowances. Now, from income tax point of view, the allowances are divided into three parts. The first one are the fully taxable allowances. The second one are the allowances which are exempt up to a specified limit. And then we come to the fully exempted allowances. So now we are going to start with the fully taxable allowances. The fully taxable allowances means that there is no exemption limit in these allowances. These allowances are charged in total. So as you can see the list, I will go with the allowances one by one. The first allowance, which is fully taxable allowance, is the dearness allowance. The dearness allowance in Hindi is also termed as Mehengai Bhatta, which is paid for increase in the price level. When the dearness allowance forms the part of the retirement, then it is also termed as dearness pay. The second one is the medical allowance, which is fully taxable. Tiffin allowance. Tiffin allowance is mainly paid by the employer to the employee to compensate for lunch and refreshment, but it is fully taxable allowance. Servant allowance. Non-practicing allowance. Non-practicing allowance is usually paid to the doctors if they are not allowed to do the private practice. To compensate for that, they are given a non-practicing allowance. Then the next allowance is the hill allowance. Hill allowance is usually paid to those employees who are working in a hilly area. So to compensate for that, a hill allowance is paid to them because the cost of living in a hilly area is much greater than a plain region. So a hill allowance is paid if the place is located less than 1000 meters height from the sea level. Then we come to the warden allowance. The warden allowance is usually paid by the educational institutions to the wardens of the hostel. It is a fully taxable allowance. Then we come to the deputation allowance. The deputation allowance is paid when a person is transferred from a permanent place of work to a temporary place. To compensate for that, deputation allowance is paid. And then we come to the overtime allowance. Overtime allowance is an allowance which is paid by the employer to the employee to compensate for the extra hours of work that he do for his organization. So this is 10 major allowances which are fully taxable. There is no exemption limit in these particular allowances. I'll repeat the list once again for you. The first one is the dearness allowance. If it comes under the retirement benefits, it forms a part of salary, then it becomes dearness pay. Then we have medical allowance, tiffin allowance, servant allowance, non-practicing allowance, hill allowance, warden allowance, deputation allowance and overtime allowance. All these allowances will be fully taxable. If 5,000 is the amount given in that question, 5,000 is taxable. There is no exemption limit in these particular allowances. So now we start with the second category of allowances, which are the allowances which are exempt up to a specified limit. And the first and the most important allowance that we need to study and we need to understand is the house rent allowance, which is given under section 10, subsection 13A. Now, what is the house rent allowance? House rent allowance is an allowance which is paid by the employer to the employee to compensate for the rent of his residential accommodation. So that means if the employee is living in a rented accommodation, house rent allowance will be paid by the employer. But house rent allowance is not fully taxable. It is exempt up to a specified limit. And that limit has been given under Rule 2A. Now we need to basically concentrate on 3 points if we need to decide that what is the exemption limit of the HRA and what is the taxable limit of the HRA. By HRA, I mean house rent allowance. So the first point is the actual house rent allowance received. The second point is the excess of rent minus 10% of the salary. And the third point is the location of the place. If the house is situated in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, In that case, we are going to take 50% of the salary, and if it is situated in any other place, then we are going to take 40% of the salary. Now, out of these 3 points, according to Rule 2A, whichever is the least amount, that amount will be exempt, and whatever is the balancing figure, that amount will be taxable. Now, please understand, whenever we are trying to calculate allowances, the term salary has a meaning. When you talk about house rent allowance, salary means 3 things. The first one is the basic salary. The second one is the dearness pay. That means dearness allowance which come under the retirement benefits. And the third one will be commission, which is paid on fixed percentage. So these are the 3 points that we need to calculate and then decide that whether house rent allowance is exempt and what part of the house rent allowance is taxable. We are going to try and understand this with a very simple example that you can see. I'll read the question for you all. From the following information, you are required to compute the exempted amount of house rent allowance of Mr. Ram, who resides in Kanpur. We have 3 cases, 1, 2 and 3, and in the 3 cases they have given us 3 particulars. The first one is the salary per month, the second one is the HRA received per month, and the last one is the rent paid per month. In all the 3 cases, we need to decide that what part of the HRA is exempt and what part of our HRA is taxable. Now, before I go on to the solution, I will do all the calculations on monthly basis. I am not doing it on the annually basis. So now let's have a look at the solution. For calculating the solution according to section rule 2A, I have written 3 points that I want. The first one is the actual HRA. The second one is the rent minus 10% of the salary. And the last one is 40% or 50% of the salary, as the case may be. Now, as the house is located in Kanpur, which is not a metro city, therefore we are going to take 40% of the salary in this case. Now, case number 1. Actual HRA is 2100 per month. Rent minus 10% of the salary. Now, as you can see in the question, rent was 1500 and 10% of the salary, that is 18,000, 10% becomes 1800. So 1500 minus 1800, there is no excess, right? That is why I have written a nil. And 40% of the salary, 18,000, 40% is 7,200. The same calculations I have done in case number 2 and case number 3. In case number 2, actual HRA 600, rent minus 10% of the salary. Rent was 1920 and 10% of the salary becomes 12,000, 10% which becomes 1200. So 1920 minus 1200 becomes 720 and 40% of the salary, that means 12,000, 40% becomes 4,800. Case 3, actual HRA is directly given to you in the question as 1050 per month. Rent minus 10% of the salary, rent is 750 and 10% of the salary is 6,000, 10% which is 600. So 750 minus 600 will give you 150 and 40% of the salary, that means 6,000 was the salary and 40% gives 2,400. So according to rule 2A, I have calculated the 3 points in all the 3 cases. Now we are going to exempt whichever is the least. Let's start with case 1. 2100, nil, 7,200. Which is the least? Nil. That means the exempted amount of HRA is nil. Case 2. 600, 720 and 4,800. Which amount is the least? 600. That means 600 amount is exempt. Case 3. 1050, 150 and 2,400. Which is the least? 150. That means 150 is exempt. So out of these 3, whichever is the least amount, that I have exempted. Now whatever is the balancing, that I will tax. How will I find that balancing figure? As you can see, actual HRA was 2,100 in case 1 and the amount exempted was nil. So 2,100 minus nil, that means 2,100 is taxable. In the second case, the actual HRA was 600 and how much is exempt? 600. So how much is taxable? 0. That means nil. And in the third case, actual HRA was 1050. How much you have exempted? 150. So how much is taxable? 900. So in this way, you need to calculate that what amount of HRA is exempt and what amount of HRA is taxable. Now after HRA, we come to our second allowance, which is exempt up to a specified limit, and that is entertainment allowance. Now please remember, entertainment allowance will come in income from salary, but then we need to see that whether it is a government employee or a non-government employee. If it's a non-government employee, entertainment allowance is fully taxable. There is no exemption limit. But if it's a government employee, then we have an exemption limit. Same way, least of the following is exempt. There are 3 points that you need to see. Out of these 3, whichever is the least, that amount you can exempt, and the remaining amount you need to tax. The first point will be the actual entertainment allowance that you receive. The second will be 20% of the salary or 1/5 of the salary, one at the same thing. And the third point is 5,000. Now 5,000 is not per month, it's only 5,000. Out of these 3 points, whichever is the least amount, that amount you can exempt, and the remaining amount of entertainment allowance you need to tax. Please remember, this exemption is available only for a government employee and it is not at all available for a non-government employee. So these were the 2 very important allowances that are exempt up to a specified limit, that is HRA and entertainment allowance. Now moving on with this head itself, there are some allowances that are special allowances. Now special allowances are also divided into 2 parts. Special allowances for office duties and special allowances for personal expenditure. The first one is the allowances which are incurred for the performance of duties, that is official duties. Now please remember, such kind of allowances are exempt up to the limit of actual expenditure, and these allowances are given under section 10 subsection 14(1) of the Income Tax Act 1961. As you can see the list, the allowances are daily allowance, helper allowance, academic allowance, uniform allowance, conveyance allowance and travelling allowance. Now I'll explain you one allowance so that it becomes very clear to you all. For example, travelling allowance. If I am the employer and you are my employee, I am giving you a travelling allowance of 5,000 per month for official duty. But the actual expenditure that was done by you was only 4,000. That means the travelling allowance will be exempt up to a limit of only 4,000, and the balance, that is 5,000 minus 4,000, 1,000 will be taxable. Again, academic allowance. Academic allowance is mainly given by the educational institutions for academic purposes like PhD or research. Now, for example, you get an academic allowance of 10,000 per month, but your actual expenditure is only 9,000 per month. In that case, 9,000 will be exempt and the balancing figure of 1,000 will be taxable. That means the allowance will be exempt only up to the limit of actual expenditure if that allowance is for the performance of duty. Now we come to the special allowances which are for meeting personal expenditures. Now these allowances are also exempt, but the exemption limit is notified by the central government and they have been given under section 10 subsection 14(2) of the Income Tax Act 1961. Now there are limits, and these limits we need to understand and we need to remember. The first one is the running allowance. Now the running allowance is given by the employer to the employee who is working in a transport system to meet personal expenditures. Now this allowance is exempt up to 70% of the allowance or 10,000 per month, whichever is less. I repeat once again, 70% of the allowance or 10,000 per month, whichever amount is less, that amount will be exempt and the balancing amount will be taxable. This allowance is also termed as running allowance. The second allowance is the education allowance. The education allowance is exempt up to 100 per month per child, maximum up to 2 children. Then we come to hostel allowance. Hostel allowance is exempt up to rupees 300 per month per child, maximum up to 2 children. Then we come to the tribal allowance. Tribal allowance is exempt up to rupees 200 per month for those employees who are working in tribal areas like MP, Tamil Nadu, UP, etc. Then we come to the last allowance, which is the underground allowance. Underground allowance is usually paid to the employees to compensate for the danger for working in mines, etc. So for that, underground allowance, it is exempt up to 800 per month. So there are basically 5 allowances. These are special allowances, and these are allowances for meeting personal expenditures, and they are exempted up to a limit which is given by the central government. Running allowance, education allowance, hostel allowance, tribal area allowance, and underground allowance. Now we are done with the second part of our allowances, that is the allowances which are exempt up to a specified limit. So once again, it was house rent allowance, entertainment allowance, special allowance. Special allowance was categorized into 2 parts: allowances which was for official or duties, and the allowances which was to meet the personal expenditures. Now we start with the fully exempted allowances, and fully exempted allowances are only 4. So the first one is the foreign allowance. Foreign allowance is an allowance which is paid by the Indian government to those employees who are rendering their services abroad. Please remember that foreign allowance will be fully exempt only when it is a government employee and that employee is a citizen of the India. If it's a non-government employee, then foreign allowance is not exempt at all. The second one is those allowances which are given to the judges of High Court and Supreme Court are also fully exempt. The third one is the allowances which are given to the employees by the UNO, that is the United Nations Organization, are also fully exempt. And the last one is the per diem allowance. Now, per diem allowance means the allowances for boarding, hotel, lodging, etc., which is paid by the employer to the employee, and that is also fully exempt. So these are 4 allowances which are fully exempt: foreign allowances, allowances which are given to the judges of the High Court and Supreme Court, allowances to the United Nations Organization, and per diem allowance. So this completes the first part of our salary, which is allowances. Please remember that there are 3 kinds: fully taxable, exempt up to a specified limit, and fully exempt. I hope that you were able to understand the basic meaning of salary and the basic allowances that will form the part of salary. Now I'm going to meet you all in the next lecture, in which we are going to discuss perquisites and also some practical questions. Thank you. Happy learning.